lovely college info night. We're going to talk about all things college applications. We're going to talk about a lot of different things leading up to the idea of college. If you're a junior, there's plenty of fun stuff for you guys as well. And I'm just really excited that I get to be here with you all today. And we're going to get to talk about stuff. So I think I'm going to take the first few minutes as a time for you to get to know me a little bit, maybe. So let me go ahead and figure out how I can share my screen and still see you all. So just give me okay. So these are the 100 brave and interesting questions. This is something that I thought we could start with because it's just a nice little icebreaker. So let's head on over to these brave and interesting questions. And this is actually a wonderful resource. So if you're interested in free resources that can help you figure out how to write your college essays, how to write a resume, all of these things, check out College Essay Guy. Love giving him a shout out. He does a lot of free stuff for students. So please go check him out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll down here. And, there are like 100 of these questions, so I haven't picked any, but why don't you guys in the chat pop one that you'd like me to answer, just as we wait for people to come on in for another 2 minutes. So in the chat, go ahead and pop anything in that you feel like you'd like me to answer. What was your best subject in school? My worst was definitely math. I can tell you that one. My best subject in school was probably biology. It was definitely my most exciting subject in school. So I guess that's the different question. Was I best at it? I was probably best at English and Spanish, but what did I love the most? I loved biology the most. Okay, we have another question here. What is a bad habit you have? William, could you answer that one? It's just vulnerability, right? Let's go right to it.
I can. I'm trying to think. I mean, not because I don't have bad habits, just because it's like, there's so many. No, a bad habit I used to have as a kind of nervous tic that I've been pretty good about kicking was picking and biting my nails, which is very gross. So I'm glad I've been able to mostly kick that. But yeah, just as a nervous tic, that's something that is a bad habit I had for a lot of my life and have largely been able to not do anymore.
Awesome. And then we had another question. What activity makes you feel most like yourself? Rachel asked it, but Rachel, I'm gonna have you answer it too.
Okay. I would say probably hiking, because usually I can, get out there, enjoy nature. Usually I'm with people who I love and care about, and just can be a really grounding activity.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Here we go. So let me tell you a little bit about Strive to Learn. We're putting on this event today because we really love helping kids, helping students, and helping families understand what it's like to apply to college, whether that's even the right pathway for them, what fit means, how you can really show yourself, show all sides of yourself in the application, all of that. So here's a little picture of some of our former students and our wonderful team. My name is Josephine. I founded Strive to Learn. We do tutoring, test prep, so SAT, ACT prep, and college admissions consulting. Here are two other wonderful members of my team. We have William, wave, William, and then Rachel. So those are two of our wonderful college counselors. So why are we creating this college info night? Why are we all here tonight? We really want to bring our knowledge to you guys. We want to make sure that anything that we do is always accessible, because that's a really big part of our mission. We don't want to serve only a certain slice of students. We want to really serve students across the board, which is why we've created a lot of different opportunities to really just bring our knowledge to you guys. So one of those that I just really wanted to share with you before we get started, which we are about to get started, don't worry, is our podcast. It's called Mindful Admissions. Highly recommend listening to episode 2 of season 1. That one's a really good one to get started with. It's about how to mindfully approach your college applications and why that is actually in your best interest. So give it a listen. We're at the end of season 2 now, and beginning of next year, season 3 is starting. So let us know if you would like us to bring you any specific content. We love suggestions. We also have a wonderful blog where you'll see a lot of things explained, like how do I fill out the FAFSA? What do I need to know about writing my personal statement? Lovely stuff like that. And then we have a newsletter. So I highly recommend that you sign up for our newsletter because it's just the best way to kind of stay up to date on, all the new stuff we're bringing out, all the free information we're sharing with you guys. Tonight's agenda, let's talk a little bit about what we have lined up for you guys. So I also see that we have a question in the chat. Okay, great. Shani, our background helper is going to get to that, Andrea. So thank you for asking. This is what we're looking at tonight. So first, we're going to learn about how colleges make decisions. I'm going to introduce that talk in just a moment. After this, at 7 p.m., we have 3 sessions running concurrently. So it's hard. You have to choose. Either you can join an open Q&A for Spanish speakers. So there's nothing planned for this session. It'll just be me answering questions. So si ustedes hablan español, yo voy a estar hablando con ustedes con todas las preguntas que pueden tener. So that's, eso es a las 7 de la noche, en una hora. So if you have parents who have some questions about the college application process, just let me know and have them come in here. We also have college prestige and student success, which will be led by Rachel. So talking about how well known should my college be to really set me up for success? And is that even a factor in my future endeavors? So that one's going to be really exciting. And then William's going to lead optimizing your optional essays. There are a lot of optional essays, for example, the additional information essay on the Common App. Whether or not you want to utilize those, and if so, how to utilize those are some things that he will be going over. After that, we have our session 2 at 7:40. We have 2 options for this one. One is really geared towards juniors, how to showcase your extracurricular activities. But seniors can also really benefit from that since you guys are assembling your activities list and writing that into your applications. And then we'll have a separate presentation by me on college admission trends and just kind of a look back at what COVID has contributed to the college admissions landscape. What does test optional mean? Fun stuff like that. After that, session 3 is at 8:20. Great for juniors and also somewhat relevant for seniors, college visit planning and tips. So how do you even build your college list? How do you figure out if college is a good fit for you? And what should you be doing when you are visiting? We also have the UC application, picking apart the PIQs. Those are your personal insight questions, or the, I'm going to say, quote unquote, essays. They don't like calling them essays, but the mini essays. We have about 15 days until the UC applications are due. So if you're working on your personal insight question responses, that's a great one to join. And then last but not least, we have one more session at 9 p.m. for those of you who are still awake at that time. And that one will be about how to make your supplemental essays shine. Those are essay prompts like, why would you like to attend our university? Or elaborate on an extracurricular activity, things like that. So just really talking about how you can write your essays for those. Okay, so that was a quick overview of all of this fun stuff and everything that we're going to be doing tonight. Shani, could you please pop the link in the chat so that everyone has the direct link to this document so that you can all click on these titles. So basically, when you click on the title here, it'll put you straight into the Zoom. So that it opens up for you. So at the time of the session, just go ahead and click on that. one of the things that we really like doing is figuring out is what we're giving out to our community working. So please let us know your thoughts and ideas. Scan this QR code. We're also going to send this out later, this presentation with all of the links. So you'll get it here. There's one survey that we would ask you to fill out after you've finished your final session of the evening. And it'll just ask you about what you liked, what we could have done better, what you would like to see in the future. So it's really, really helpful for us to know about that. So I really urge you to just open that right now, keep it on your phone, and then fill it out at the end of the night. So we will now be hearing from Ed Devine. He is the Western Regional Director of Admissions and Manager of Constituent Relations. That is a mouthful, for Xavier University. So, Ed, we're really, really happy to be able to welcome you here. I know you've worked in college admissions for 20 years in 7 different universities, and you are not currently in California. You are in Hawaii. How's the weather over there?
The weather's good. Actually, a rainy day. We needed it, though, believe it or not.
Get a little respite from the humidity once it's rained off, right?
Exactly. But it comes right back.
Awesome. Well, you also used to live in California for 20 years. Isn't that right?
That's true. Yep. I lived in San Diego, Claremont, actually.
Oh, very close. We're located in Orange County.
Yep.
So I think, maybe some of our viewers could pop in the chat. Where are you guys at right now? Are you guys in Costa Mesa and Newport? Are you across the country in Vermont? Would be lovely to see where you all are. So feel free to pop that in the chat. And I'd also love to know if you are a senior or a junior or a parent. Maybe you're really early in your sophomore or freshman. So Chicago, great. I love it.
Yeah.
Los Angeles, parent, wonderful. And a senior, okay. Keep them coming. We love to know who's listening to us so that we can make sure to gear all our content towards you as we chat. But that's really great to know that we have several time zones going on here. Costa Mesa, welcome. I too am in Costa Mesa currently. Who knows? Maybe we're neighbors. I love that we can do that in the virtual environment and bring everyone together. So thank you guys so much for sharing. All right. So one more thing about Ed, his favorite Dr. Seuss quote is, "Oh, the places you'll go." I love that. What makes you pick that one?
Well, I think just loving college search and all the opportunities that are out there. I think in my 7 different universities and close to 30 years now working in the business, it's fun to work with students who find new ways, find new paths. And I think it's great to think about celebrating with your classmates, all those places you hadn't heard about. And so I think there's so many great opportunities as our young people launch into this college search, understanding there are some amazing schools. I think is a fun quote to kind of reflect on that.
Wonderful. So then I'm going to, basically hand it over to you. Ed is going to tell us about how college decisions are made, what's included in an application, how the colleges review your application, and how they make decisions about admitting students. So that is a lot to cover. I wish you luck, Ed. I'm excited about your presentation. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Josephine. I have worked for 7 institutions. I got into college admissions by accident myself. I went to a small school in Maine called Colby College, but got into admissions working at a pharmacy college in Boston. I've worked for 3 Jesuit schools now. I've worked for schools in Hawaii, in Illinois, and now in Cincinnati, Ohio. I worked for Lafayette College most recently. I've been a regional rep for the past 22 years, meaning I get to live in the region where I work with students. I'm part of a great group called the Regional Admission Counselors of California, a group of over 100 universities, about 140 professionals that are there to work with. So reach out to them. We always talk about us being in the office of admission, not the office of rejection. So we are here to work with you and to meet you during your college search and answer some questions. So excited to talk tonight about how decisions are made. I will also note that my wife is a high school counselor, and she comes home many nights and says, "Hey, you guys don't make sense what you're doing." And so I'm going to try to peel back the curtain and give some insight. And really, I think the message that we want families to think about is what you have control over and what you can put all your energy into and how you might just let the cards fall where they may. It doesn't always make sense, our decisions, we know that, but I'm going to give you some insight as best I can to get you prepped. So we'll talk about selectivity a little bit. There are probably just about 50 or 100 schools that really have that high selectivity or low selectivity. They're really tough to get into, and they tend to drive a lot of the anxiety around the college search. So we will look at that and what it means. I'll talk about what we consider. Really, when you look at the college application process, no matter what school you're applying to, there's only so much we have to work with and consider. And again, your job is to put together the best application. I know you've got some great sessions coming up later today. And as you move through the search process, there is opportunity to really put your best foot forward. And then it's up to us to do our decision. I'm going to share a little bit how our funnel works, how we move through the process. I'm going to use a term called institutional priorities. And that's when we look at what our goals are as an institution and how that might work in your favor. It might not work in your favor, but it's something well beyond your control, something we might not even know until we take a look at what our applicant pool looks like. We'll talk about your list, that strategy, and some final thoughts to kind of get us through the process. So really, again, back to selectivity, we will define schools as most selective, highly selective, moderately selective, and then open. Most students will guess or know pretty closely the most selective schools in the country, what percentage of applications they admit, and it's under 5%. To the parents on the line, back when I went to school in '85, it was much different. Ivy League schools were as selective now as UC campuses might be. And so it's changed a lot. Students are applying to a lot more schools. They'll guess that 5%, but good to understand that nationally, the acceptance rates are closer to 70%, and you'll find schools all over the place. Anything under 15 or 20%, that most selective, it's going to be very difficult to make sense of the decisions. Once you move into that highly selective, you're looking at 20 to 35% perhaps. They start to make more sense, but again, things may work against you. Your job is to put together the best application. The school I currently work for, Xavier, we're probably in that moderately selective. So it's a little bit more predictable in what our admit rates are going to be, usually somewhere in that 50 to 60% range. And then you've got schools that'll go all the way down the line to open enrollment. So really when you start, and before I jump in on selectivity, clumping of the schools, looking at all these lists, so many awesome opportunities to find schools of the 3,000 that you want to apply to. Your counselors here on the line will help you to kind of put that into a 3-tiered system that I'll talk a little bit about. But really take a look at some of the opportunities to find schools and start to identify their characteristics. And then you will assemble a list. And the list is what you want to love as you move through this process. We will do a dance for our seniors all the way through till May 1, where we look to find and create that match. And some great opportunities to look at a whole host of schools here that range from your in-states, your Western undergraduate exchange. This little IHS is the Jesuit schools. I work for Xavier. It's one of the 27 Jesuit schools like Gonzaga, Santa Clara, the Loyolas, for example. But as we define selectivity, most selective schools, again, they're going to admit that under 10%. You can see that they push through a large number of applications. It's very difficult to go through the process and come up with that 2,000 out of 22,000 that you're going to admit. So understand that's what the selectivity looks like when you talk about total application numbers. But you're going to know that number. You're going to know that admit number, that percentage. But I also want you to think about the second number you see, which is the enrollment number, or what we call yield rate. That can be 79% at certain schools, at the most selective schools. When we drop down a little bit, highly selective schools, again, might take that 22% of the applications to 30%. Again, pushing very large numbers of applications through. It's tough when you get into making that type of selectivity for it always to make sense. Many students will have over a 3.9 or a 4.0 GPA. That's been a national trend over the past 15 years. So GPAs are one differentiator, but a lot of students are bringing in really strong GPAs, and it makes that decision for the school tougher to get to that 4,251 admits. A big drop here, though, in the yield rate. That yield rate dropped to 39%. So I want you to keep that in mind. I'll talk about later that ability for us to predict who we admit and will they choose us. Again, the selective schools where Xavier falls. The previous school I worked at was in the highly selective. We admit they admit anywhere from 50 to 70%. Again, the yield rate may be as low as 10% to 24% in that grouping. Again, the number admitted that picked them. And then the moderately selective schools, really a wide range of GPAs, a wide range of SAT, ACT. You can see that change quite a bit. The number of students in the top 10% of the class changes quite a bit. But you can see that admit rate at 78%, still that yield rate dropping a little bit lower. So again, the range probably 4.4% admit rate all the way up to close to 100%, but the national average would be just under 70% of students that are admitted. So the types of review as we move forward to talk about how we make these decisions, there are schools, larger programs perhaps, that use a formula or a grid system. If you meet a certain GPA, a certain testing, perhaps even a certain curriculum bar that they set, it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's even published. You can even see information online of whether you would get scholarship along with your admission. Holistic review I'll talk about. That's when your whole entire application will be discussed. Comprehensive holistic review is when your application will end up possibly in a committee with a group of 4 or 5 people making that final decision. You will go through with your counselors the ideas of rolling admission and regular admission. That will play a little bit of an impact on how our decisions are made. Rolling admission is great because that is just you being compared against yourself. So when you apply early in the process with a rolling admission school, usually within 3 to 4 weeks, you'll get an answer back. Regular admissions means there'll be one deadline and all the applications are considered together. That's where things can be really tricky as far as the high selectivity schools, because we don't know each year until we see the applicant pool what the numbers look like, how many apps we received, where the GPA stands, what the balance in the applicant pool might look like. So that's a little bit about that. And then there's strategy around early decision, early action, and watching those priority deadlines that you will talk about later on. But we're going to focus again on holistic review and comprehensive holistic review and the ways that those things are done and how those decisions are made. So what we have to consider, these are no mysteries here, but we will talk about these and how the importance will kind of shape in the highly selective and selective world. Right now, the most important thing, as it's been for years, is the curriculum, the type of classes, followed quickly by your grade point average. We can talk about different ways we look at and break down grade point average. Test scores have been dropping in importance, especially with this test optional world that we now live in, created by the pandemic. We have fast tracked to the point where now 1,700 schools are test optional, but resume and activity are important. We do want to reflect on that, especially during the pandemic. A lot of things have been postponed or canceled. So students are finding creative ways to show what they do with that free time. I know you've got sessions about essays. Those are really critical for us to get to know you. Short answers are an opportunity for you to answer questions directly to colleges. We'll touch on those. The recommendation letters. So for juniors out there, know that your teachers that you're working with right now will write 1 or 2 letters for you. Standard to have those junior teachers write letters. Your guidance counselors will write letters as well. You may have the opportunity to interview or at least demonstrate interest. That means your connection to the school. We'll share some thoughts on how you can do that. You really want to show this ability to say, I fit at that particular school. And that will be part of our decision process. So again, just a deeper dive into curriculum. We really will take a look at most schools all 4 years. We will break down grade trend. We will look at many different types of GPAs, weighted, unweighted. Schools will use those differently. We'd love to see you move towards honors and advanced coursework. It's not required that you do it in every class, but when appropriate, move towards more challenging college prep coursework. Grade trends. We're seeing a lot of trends that are different to us because of the pandemic that might have had impact, but be able yourself to explain why you see a trend in grades, whether you started slow or had a bump in the road based on a move or something that happened in your personal life. Those things can be explained. So when we look at curriculum, right after that, we talk about the grade point average. And then right after that GPA, we talk about any trends that we can note in that. We love to see what you do in these 5 key disciplines of math, English, history, science, and foreign language. Sometimes we will recalculate our own GPA, what we call our institutional GPA, and it'll be based on these courses. So a student has the opportunity to take 4 years of each of these disciplines, not always required. A great example would be in foreign language. Many of our students stop taking that after 2 or 3 years, and that's okay. Many times they will replace that or take something else like computer science, or they'll double up on a math or double up on a history. But as we talk about deep curriculums, we're really looking for a student to push forward into those 5 disciplines and through that 4 years. Your essay is a great opportunity, and I know you've got some opportunity to work with William coming up, but to share who you are, things that aren't on the application, things that we don't see in your essay, things that we don't see in your activities list. Really share the who you are, the why you do things, not the what. Whether you win CIF or you lose every game, that's not important. It's what the team experience meant to you. Tell us stories, just like we were sitting around in a backyard. In Hawaii, we have something called Talk Story, and it's a very communication-oriented culture, and we love to hear stories. Be a storyteller. That's what the essay is about, giving me the sense that I got to know you. I will deliver to committee a story about a student with a 3.7 GPA and a 28 ACT, but who is also a swimmer that loves coaching young people in the pool. And that's kind of the story that we want to tell. We want something that kind of sticks. Oftentimes when writing an essay, one of my favorite things for you to do is think about 3 adjectives that describe you, and then write stories that showcase the why. And that gives me the opportunity to deliver to committee the who you are outside of the classroom, gives me that sense of meeting you and kind of figuring out where you will fit within our community. So thinking about essay is important. Don't think, what does the college want to hear? Think more, who am I and what's my story? Your recommendations, be good to those junior teachers. They will tell us about your classroom experience, your intellectual curiosity, your fight, your stick-to-itiveness to learn things that you don't learn easily. We talked about, I think Josephine mentioned math. Maybe she had a great teacher that she worked with that could showcase her grit and talk about that grit and her persistence with math. Your guidance counselors will tell who you are within the community. So share your story with them, and they will be able to speak to your character, your work habits, even your personal background. And that is all part of the narrative that we're looking to get to know. I'm not going to go too far into this, but this is your activities list. We work on the Common App, about 900 colleges and universities do. You have opportunity to put activities together. I would suggest you also put a Word document resume together, because you can carry that with you to interviews and meetings. But this is your opportunity to talk about what you do outside the classroom. We really love to hear about that. The list has expanded, and it always should have been, to include things like home responsibilities, cooking responsibilities, fun things that you do with video games or online virtual events, really kind of expanding that list to tell us what you do with your free time. What's your commitments? I've seen students who have learned how to play instruments. Some have learned or self-taught themselves languages or American Sign Language. Others have really done deep dives into their history, their family history. So what you put on the activity list is up to you. Here's what it might look like in a Word document format. And this is an opportunity for you to, again, put this together, tell us the activity, your titles, what you did with that activity, when you did it, and we get excited to see and think about how that's going to showcase you committing to our school. In the Common App, you have space for 10, a lot of limitation in what you can title it or how much. You have 150 characters to explain it. So work closely with your counselors on that, because it is important to us. This is what we see on our side. So when we make decisions, one of the things I jump to pretty quickly after looking at your transcripts and your grades is this activities list. And you get a good sense here. It's got headings that are done by Common App. So community service, athletics, clubs, student government, work, always important to put. Things that stand out to us on the left side, you can see an account for how much time the students spend doing this. In this example, they did it 9, 10, 11, and 12th grade, 3 hours a week, 36 weeks a year. So that hospital volunteer work is very significant. Other things, you can just be spell things out, right? Don't just put CSF, put California Scholarship Federation. Understand people are reading this across the country. Be descriptive in what you lay out there for us. Note leadership here. Team captain is highlighted, right? So we know now the student has gone beyond and they've gone to that leadership level. Again, work always belongs on there. things outside of the classroom, outside of your school, things like scouts and NCL, volunteer opportunities. Really start with just a brainstorm to see what belongs on this list, and then you'll fit that in there. Again, we get excited to talk about what you will continue when you move to our campuses. So often we ask that. You can see this student here lists continue with the work they did with their social media strategies. Some schools do have the opportunity, or Bill mentioned the additional information section. That's a part of the application where you can explain things that don't fit in other parts. Don't put a second essay in here. This is a great place to talk about things that have happened to you, transitions, health issues, moves in school. We've seen a lot of schools, for example, only have pass-fail grades, and students will write this information into additional information. Sometimes schools will let you support or send information, either video links, website links. You might put that into the additional information section, or if you're applying to music or you have talent in music, poetry, art, you can actually add that to your Common App through something called Slide Room. But always, if you have a visual or virtual presence, be willing to share that link, and most schools will have time to possibly jump out and look at those. We may consider interviews in our process, so don't be afraid of those. This is a great way to show connection to a school. And so get out there, have fun with it. We don't bite. We just like to get to know you. This really will bring to life everything that's in your application. The hardest question I will ask you in an interview, tell me about yourself, right? So be willing to share that story. Think about your brags. We talk about that often. What are the 3 key things about who you are? Most times, what we talk about in the interview comes right off your activity list. More history about your high school, more history about the why you took certain classes, and then what you do outside of the classroom. I did mention demonstrated interest. I'm going to show you how that plays into our decision, but really leaning into the college and university through this process can be a big part of what we decide. When we go back to looking at admit rate and then yield rate, your demonstrated interest, your connection to us will help ensure that you might be one of the students that pick us. And as you move from that to moderately selective and highly selective schools, it's very important for us to think there's a sense of fit. We've seen a big change over the past years where now students apply to, on average, 12 schools. It used to be about 3.5. So you can only go to 1, but you really want to be able to showcase your research and connection to a school, and that may come out in demonstrated interest. Fill out cards, engage us online. If you can get to campus, do that. I've always worked with California students representing schools well outside of the state, so there are opportunities to connect virtually. I will come to your high schools. I will host information sessions in your backyard, not literally, but someplace close. Come on out and see us. Let us know that you're there. If you visit campus, make it official. Go to the admissions office. See about other programs that you can sign up to do. We actually can track and watch your engagement with us online. We can see if you read our emails, check in on our newsletters, visit with us virtually. So your ability to do that's going to teach you more about the school. It's going to help you write a better supplemental response. And it's also going to give you greater capacity to make that important decision in April of where you're going to go, the one school that you go to. But for us on the strategy side, we know that we're going to admit a lot of students. We really want to understand and select the ones that are going to pick us. So there's what we have to consider. Again, curriculum, GPA, the top things considered. Quickly after that, the who you are outside the classroom, the who you tell us you are from your essay, what your teachers talk about, what they say, and then that ability to connect with us and show us fit in a sense of that connectivity that you have to the school. Now, the way we see it, and getting into the weeds here and pulling back the curtain quite a bit, we will kind of talk about students in 2 ways: your academic qualities and your personal qualities. So I mentioned back earlier that there are kind of a comprehensive review or holistic, and then a deeper holistic or comprehensive holistic review. Oftentimes with a holistic review, the entire application may be read. It may be read by one reader, so one admission counselor. A side note, very often the person that reads your application will be the person that you meet at your high school visit. It will be the person that you do that one-on-one meeting with at Starbucks or at your high school. Very often that first reader will be assigned by geography So you might have an opportunity to know who the first reader of your application is. First readers sometimes will pass to a second reader, a second set of eyes. That would be somebody not connected to the high school or to the region, and really somebody to kind of justify or talk about what the first reader looked at. Many times second readers' jobs are to be a little bit more critical and really look for fit and really kind of help the school guard or manage the number of students they admit. In a holistic or comprehensive holistic, every applicant possibly could end up at a table being discussed by 3 to 5 readers, 7 readers. Oftentimes that application will be read once, twice, and then scanned by additional committee members. But what we often talk about is your academic qualities, the who you are academically. We just saw this on the last list. So your high school curriculum, your GPA, test scores, if they're there. We see a lot of students still taking testing and then deciding later what schools they'll admit or submit those scores to. But that makes up your academic, or AQ, or AR, we might call it, your academic qualities. And we know GPA-wise, the who you are, testing-wise, who you are, and how you fit into our profile. Beyond that, we really get excited about the personal qualities, the demographics, the who you are. Did you have parents that went to our institution? Are you coming to us from a state that we don't see a lot of applicants from? Are you bringing to us different skills and different talents? Are you coming with a unique major for your particular demographic background? Who are you outside the classroom? These are all things where we reflect on your personal qualities. And when we make decisions, we don't want just the top academic students. We want to get students throughout our academic profile, and we will work hard to do that. And where students can stand out is with those personal qualities. So within committee, as we reflect on this AQ, PQ, we will often ask, who can do the work? What students can do the work? Even schools that admit 10% or 15%, many of them would say that probably 65% of the students in their applicant pool could academically handle the work at that school, all right? So it's a lot of the students in the applicant pool are academically fit to be at our institution. So we will ask who can do the work. Then we'll ask, where will they make impact on campus? That's where we go to the personal qualities, the who you are and what you will bring to our campus. What activities will you continue with? You do things in high school, we hope not just to get into college, but because you have interest. And if you pick up new interests in your junior and senior year, that's totally fine. We love to see that you will pursue those interests on our campus. We'll ask, what kind of student are we delivering to faculty? Again, this will be told oftentimes by your teachers, kind of who you are in the classroom, how you present yourself in the classroom. That will be shared. Who will we deliver to our student life? What kind of roommate are you going to be? Those kinds of questions we will answer as well. And then always a big question, do you fit? Have you convinced us, or have you given indication that you are fit? And if we admit you, will you choose us? We know that you're applying to 12 schools. You're going to get admitted to multiple schools. Give us a sense that you've done your research. You know Xavier, you know Lafayette, you know Hawaii Pacific. You've done the research and given us that sense that you will fit, or you'll make that choice to choose us. So that's kind of the how. And for juniors, it's a great time to kind of start exploring the opportunities to become leaders. Don't overthink or overdo your curriculum. Take what your advisors suggest that you take. Start thinking about college more in the sense of a bucket list of things that you want to do in school, and then look for schools, define the schools that offer those opportunities. You might dig in and research 20 to 30 schools. You may have a connection to a major or not. That's totally fine. Our seniors, it's time for you to be doing the application, writing those essays. Think about your senior grades. The first half of senior year can be critical in our decision making. Know that you're going to add a big layer of responsibility in applying to our schools while you're a senior, while you're taking your most demanding curriculum, while you're probably doing the most as far as leadership. But understand you have to be a senior. It's your job to enjoy that senior year and find this balance, and that's part of the process. So when we look at selectivity, when we look at loving a college list, think of that slide I had with all the different types of schools, 3,000 in this country, 17,000 across the world. There's a school for you. but you're going to start to work with your counselors to put them into 3-tiered lists. So it's great to apply to schools that you are academically going to be a challenge for you. The target schools you might fit academically, the likely schools you'll exceed that. Love that list. Know that you can name schools, put them into that list. And that's really the key to your college search success. You might pick up some deny letters. That's going to happen. Who cares, right? Just don't go to those schools. Pick their rival and root against them forever. In the target and likely schools, those schools that you exceed the academics, oftentimes you'll get your admissions offer, and many times you'll get good scholarship offers there as well. So love that list. Assemble a list that has meaning. Make sure that every school on the list, you can intelligently say why you would go to that school and what you love about it. And I'm just going to reflect here on how we move students through the funnel. I will tell you that if you want to ask any questions, please type those in. We'll move to a quick Q&A in just a second here. But again, if at any point you want to type anything in, I'm happy to answer those questions. But as we look at this sample funnel, you kind of saw this in the early slides when we talked about selectivity. Understand that schools process thousands of applications. If you're looking at the UC or in the backyard of the University of California, 140,000 applications, right? Schools like Colgate, because of test optional, doubled their applicant pool. They didn't change the quality of the school, nor did they change much about the opportunity to offer more seats, but that's going to make it more selective. So we are processing a lot. Many schools, again, in this first read, second read, understand that you may have contact with a first reader, somebody that's going to spend the most time reading your application, do a write-up on that. Do know you can make connections with them. You don't have to friend them on Facebook or follow them every day, but having a meeting with them, sending a thank you note, asking questions when they come up, making that contact is good for you. It's good for admissions, but it's also good to develop knowledge about schools through the process. When we get into the second reads, in this example, this school had to cut 3,500 acceptances out of those first readers who said, no, 12,500, these are admissible. Then the second read cuts that 3,500. Then they might go into committee. That's where we sit in the round table and we talk about each applicant, who they are, what they bring. And we have to work down to, in this case, 7,000 acceptances at this sample school. And that's what they will send out admission-wise to get a class of 1872. Again, their admit rate, 36%, their yield rate, 26.7%. You have some control in what happens there. Not a lot of control in getting into the accept pool, but really understanding that ability to demonstrate interest is a big part of what we like to see. Now, when we do look at our entirety, our application pool in our entirety, a lot of times students that are accepted in this first round or even second round may have what it takes, and they may get pulled out later. We will look for balance within our admitted pool so that we can sit a textured, talented undergraduate class each year. So sometimes we may look at gender balance. We may look at geographic balance. We may look at majors by balance by major. Some schools look at the ability to fund students or for students and families to fund their education. And students may be moved in and out of the acceptance pool because of that. So those are when decisions don't make sense necessarily. It's beyond your control. That's when we get to the institutional priorities, things that you just can't control. So your educated guess, working with the counselors here, will help you to understand that reach target likely. Understand that we're going to give the application the full read when we're in these moderately and highly selective schools. And how we make decisions isn't always just a reflection on your ability to be successful. It's kind of our institutional priority to put a class together. And so you have control of a lot of it. Ultimately, in April, you have all the control because you can pick the college you attend. So really do that work to lean in, do that work to let us know you've done your research, and really think about in April making that decision and really focusing on what you want to do in college as opposed to who admits you. You will have opportunity to do and achieve your goals. But that is good strategy for admissions, but it's also good strategy for making that final decision. So Josephine, if you want to come back on, we'll see if folks have any questions, or if you have any questions, happy to answer those. And I know you've got some great sessions coming up. So
yeah, thank you so much, Ed. This was amazing. Yeah, everyone who's watching, please pop your questions in the chat if you have any questions. We have one here, Horace. What qualities in students stand out the most to you, Ed?
Yeah, I love that question, Josephine. I really love students that are curious, that are open. We call it coachable. I've played and coached sports, so be coachable, be kind of a sponge. Students, families, there are a lot of people around you who've got a college education. Find out where your teachers went, what they loved about the experience, but really be open to suggestion, be open to learning. We know that we're going to put a lot of questions to you. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? It'd be okay with being unsure. It's okay to be unsure on your major, the where you want to go. I always tell students, expect to be surprised in April. It's a great search when all of a sudden you come back and you say, I'm going out of state, or I'm staying in state, or I'm going to this kind of school. I thought I was going to go to that kind of school. Expect to be surprised, but expect it's okay to just be open. I think doers we're looking for in the application, students that are active and participants. Not every one of our students is the class president. There's only so many of those in the country. Not everyone leads by being in front. Some lead by being behind. But we love to see students that kind of are going to be active, and they're going to pursue interests. They'll try new things. I think that's the exciting part about college. And we know a lot of your success, your freshman success, is predicated on doing things outside the classroom on our campus. So joining clubs, connecting with faculty, that's all critical to your success. So you can showcase that, and that may be just as important as your test score, your ability to manage time, your ability to have fun, your ability to look for and find mentors. That can all be part of the process. So I think be curious, be open, be willing to lean in, be vulnerable. We don't expect you to have all the answers. We've all done this as old people, but this is your first time through this college search. So expect to be a little bit, it's okay to be like, I don't know. I don't understand that. Especially when we use acronyms, right? If we use EFC or FAFSA, raise your hand and say, I don't know what that is. Please tell me. Is there another question,
exactly.
Josephine?
Yeah, we do have one more question. Also, after this, I'm going to share my screen. So if you don't mind stopping the share on yours so that I can do that at the end. So maybe in a nutshell, Ed, let me give you 60 seconds to answer this one. When a student has a 529 plan to pay for classes, does it influence the deciders to select or admit a student?
So that's a great question. And generally, when we talk about ability to pay, there are schools that are very upfront about the fact that they will be need aware. So there's need blind. Most times when applicants go through the funnel, it's a need blind process until sometimes the end. And certain schools, and you can ask them directly, is a need awareness lens applied to the final decision in the class? And some schools will definitely look at that. So if a plan is there, if funding is there, if you haven't applied for financial aid, schools might actually use that in the decision process. Typically, those schools are giving out a ton of aid. They might meet full need. And so what they have to do is then kind of guard or understand, how much there is going out the door. So yeah, sometimes schools will utilize a need aware, meaning they consider the family's ability to pay on both sides towards the end of that process. When we looked at that funnel, that would be very late. Not necessarily do all the counselors do it. Sometimes that's done at the upper level of directorship and deanship, but that ability to pay for families may adjust and shape the class or cause shift in the class just because schools only have so much funding in their endowments to award. So in a way of being responsible for that, they may look at a family's ability to pay, and that could have influence, absolutely.
That was a great in a nutshell answer. I love that. Thank you so much. So we are going to go a lot more in depth on a lot of the things that Ed kind of introduced our thought process towards. You talked about the additional info essay and how that's oftentimes a missed opportunity. And that's actually something that William is going to go into at 7 p.m. in his session, Optimize Your Optional Essays. So check out William's session. Shawnee, would you please put in the chat again the link to the document that has all of the titles are all hyperlinked to the Zoom session so that you can all access those. And then Rachel is going to tell us a bit about college prestige and student success. Ed mentioned how the selectivity varies, right? And I think there are a lot of myths out there as far as how selective or prestigious a college might sound or look, and what that actually means for you personally. So Rachel's going to do a little bit of myth busting on that at 7 and 6 minutes. I'm going to be hanging out in my own Zoom room, ready for anyone who has any questions in Spanish. So I will be over there hanging out. Feel free to join me. And then later we have the other sessions we've talked about. I'm going to share my screen again really quickly, just to make sure you all again. I think that is it, unless we have anything else. Nope, I think that's it. Thank you. See you in 5 minutes, everyone. And thank you, Ed, so much for joining us today. That was wonderful.
Thank you all. Good night.